Now let's talk about the topic. I started looking at this a week or so ago, and I heard the comment that the backlog on cases for immigration was approaching something like 10 million. And that just seemed to me to be incredibly excessive. And I thought, well, there's probably a way that AI might be able to mitigate some of these problems and questions that we might have. Is everybody seeing my screen right here?
Yes.
Okay, okay, very good. I just want to double check on that. So um, I thought about, is there a way that AI could be applied to a really, really hard problem that a broad scope of folks are facing? And I did some research and I said, yes, I believe it can, but I believe it would be a more interesting discussion if we brought it up for the whole group and say, how would we take AI and break down a problem like this into something that we can then analyze and come up with directions on? And that's where I wanted to get everybody to jump in and spend some time talking about this. And the first,
A kiosk is probably a more acceptable approach to something like that versus an app because it can be monitored effectively. I mean, you have to make sure the person that's doing the fingerprints, maybe doing headshot for facial recognition, has to be supervised to make sure that the data collected is from a particular person. But that would be more suited to like a kiosk, but it could be driven by AI in the background.
Yeah, I mean, what I think we're trying to do here is because there's a huge question of funds, where the funds go, who's allocating them, how can we do this in the most way possible?
I also think it's an electoral-political situation because you got a lot of cross-agency dependency as a result of that, like the FBI database and then the criminal information database and all these other things that have to be checked for someone to come in, especially Homeland Security. I think that's where it becomes more complex as we can all say, oh yeah, it's a great solution. Build an app or build a kiosk and have people, facial recognition. They walk up, they don't have to do anything. We just record it. Are they in the database already? And if not, enter your name, right? It becomes that simple. If again, what we advise clients, and this is the one thing that, again, hypothetically speaking, is let's map out the experience. What is it that we want these people to go through, right? And to get the information ingested. And then once we understand what's required to do that, and then we can do the further downstream processing to say, okay, well, this is how AI can be leveraged, right? Because right now we're trying to tackle it all at once and saying, okay, well, here's an input. We need to do fingerprinting. Okay, great. What's involved in all that? And what should and again, recognizing that we have cultural and demographic issues on top of everything. These all have to be factored into how you go about approaching a solution like that. But I do think that fingerprinting might be low-hanging fruit. I think that scheduling in general, AI, we know already from past tools and tools that are out there today, AI scheduling is a convenient item. It rarely messes up. It doesn't hallucinate like some of the large language models. So it's just using algorithms and being more intelligent about how to schedule and adjust for conflicts.
agreed. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, but I think you guys are right on it. We've got to break it down into smaller bundles to be able to attack the problem. One of the things that we looked at was should AI. There's three ways we looked at this thing. We looked at it from if judges and the pure legal system with humans only process this, how long would it take to get through all the backlog? And then the second one was if AI alone was given the task to do it, and only AI was given the task to do it, how long would it take and could it effectively do it? And then the third one was give me a hybrid approach where AI does what it does really well, but you still leave the nuances and the nuanced part of the law to humans to make the final interpretation. And I found that fascinating when you start querying AI in terms of how do you act if we gave you this problem, AI, and you're the only thing that could solve this, how do you do it? And then we got into deep discussions of the prime objective of AI, which is no judge, jury, and executioner over humans. In other words, it can't have that kind of authority. And it came back and it actually told us that. I can't do that part. That's not the right way to do this. There are other ways that we can do it and do it better. And it's just going to take longer.
I think the key here is that there, as Lee pointed out, these are hypothetical numbers, and again, in as a business person, if I looked at this and I'd say, okay, I'm only getting a 2-to-1 improvement by using human and AI augmentation versus 3 years of savings, or 7 years of savings if I only go with AI. That's not a good foundational case, because the reality is you can't. All these processes that we're talking about, especially around justice, require some level of human authority, because someone has to make a decision, someone has to approve it, and you're not going to put that responsibility into the hands of AI. You can't automate a decision about a person's asylum, for example, right? It has to, all the check boxes have to be checked, and conditions need to be satisfied, but ultimately somebody has to review that case. And it needs to be a sentient person, meaning someone who actually can take all those things into consideration. AI may be able to augment. And I think the things that I tend to recommend is that, the AI can offer advisory services here. AI is not going to be the person or the item that makes the decision, but AI can put all the factors together and say, based on all the information that I've been presented, this is the likelihood of this person getting approved, and here are all the areas that might be of a concern, and present that to a deciding authority, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't focus so much on the numbers, but then when you start thinking about the investment to build something like this, right? A 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 return isn't going to be compelling enough for the government, right? We have to think about it from that standpoint too. We're talking about a nation state as opposed to a company or an individual. So government tends to work at a completely different area, as I know Amy and Sherry can attest to. So it's just, I think we have to look at this thing again with a different set of objectives. And I think the first thing is, okay, we know hypothetically that artificial intelligence can bring immediate benefit to processing large amounts of data. Okay, that's a given. So how well do we understand the journey that the data and or the persons have to go through, and all the potential stopping points and all the potential decision gates that need to be reached before we can draw a conclusion like this, if that makes sense? On you, Ted, because you bring up a really good point, and don't disagree with anything you just said, but let me turn that around on you. Let's say we stay within the political envelope of 30,000 H-1Bs per year, right? But now the time it takes to turn that around, instead of being 3 months, it takes a week, right? What that does is, those are what I would call tangential benefits to improve processes, right? So AI being used and to improve the process, does that free up those people to tackle other areas? So in other words, if I finished all the H-1B visas, and I'm not trying to get an increase, go from 30,000 to 100,000, I agree with you there, right? But I now hit my limit, I can get that done, and each H-1B application process opens January 1st, and it closes January 31st, and you get your decision by February 15th. Now you have the rest of the year to not worry about your H-1B visas. What are those people who are doing those processing? What else are they working on, right? Where else can I use that to balance my workload? Can I use that to change a process? Can I use that to add or remove resources to make lives easier, right? Because you're right, AI is supposed to be helpful, not hurtful. And so at the end of the day, we just have to view it with that kind of lens.